I never thought I would be watching a middle-aged woman get handcuffed in my driveway over a snow shovel. But February in Buffalo, New York, has a way of bringing out the absolute worst in people. The blizzard had started 3 days earlier, and by the time it finally let up, my street in the Pleasant Valley HOA community looked like someone had dumped the entire contents of a snow globe onto our neighborhood. The drifts against my garage door were easily 4 feet high, and I knew I had about 6 hours before the next wave hit, according to the weather reports. My snow shovel, a professional-grade beast that I had purchased from a specialty outdoor equipment store in downtown Buffalo for $575, was the only thing standing between me and being completely trapped in my house. I know what you are thinking. Who spends that much on a snow shovel? Well, anyone who has lived through multiple Buffalo winters knows that cheap equipment breaks, and when you are dealing with the kind of heavy, wet snow that our city is famous for, you need something that can handle it. This was not just any shovel. It was an ergonomic snow removal system with an adjustable aluminum handle, a reinforced steel blade with a specialized coating, and a leverage mechanism that made moving heavy snow actually possible without destroying your back. I had researched it for weeks before buying it last October. My name is James Dalton, and I had lived in the Pleasant Valley community for almost 2 years. When I first moved in, I thought an HOA would be a good thing. You know, maintained common areas, enforced standards, that kind of thing. What I did not anticipate was Barbara Richardson. Barbara was 53 years old, according to the community directory, and she had been the HOA president for the past 7 years. She had that particular haircut that screams, "I want to speak to your manager," blonde highlights that were too yellow, and an expression that looked like she was perpetually smelling something unpleasant. She drove a white Lexus SUV with a HOA President vanity plate, which should have been my first warning sign when I moved in. The morning after the blizzard paused, I bundled up in my heavy winter gear and headed to my garage. I kept my expensive shovel hanging on a specific rack right by the garage door, easy to grab when I needed it. Except when I got there, the rack was empty. I stood there for a solid 30 seconds, staring at the empty space, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. I looked around the garage, thinking maybe I had moved it for some reason. Nothing. I checked behind my car near my workbench, even in the corners where I kept other outdoor equipment. The shovel was gone. My cheaper backup shovel, a $30 plastic thing from the hardware store, was still there. So were my ice scrapers, my snow brush, even the bag of salt I kept for the walkway. Just the expensive shovel was missing. I stepped out of the garage and looked around my property. The snow was undisturbed except for some animal tracks. Nobody had walked through my yard during the night. I walked down my driveway to the street, my boots crunching in the snow, and that is when I saw Barbara Richardson 3 houses down, vigorously shoveling her driveway with what looked exactly like my shovel. My first thought was that maybe she had the same model. It was a nice shovel after all. Other people could have bought it. But as I walked closer, I could see the distinctive red reflective tape I had wrapped around the handle for visibility, and the small dent near the blade where I had accidentally hit it against my concrete step last month. That was definitely my shovel. I walked up to her driveway, trying to keep my cool. Barbara stopped shoveling when she saw me approaching and planted the shovel in a snow bank, her hand resting on the handle like it was a sword. "James," she said, her voice dripping with false cheerfulness. "Good morning. Quite a storm we had." "Barbara, that is my shovel," I said, pointing at the tool in question. Her eyes widened in what I can only describe as theatrical innocence. Excuse me. That shovel. It is mine. I bought it in October. It has my red tape on the handle and you can see the dent right there. I pointed to the damaged spot. Barbara looked down at the shovel, then back at me, her expression shifting from fake surprise to indignation. This is my shovel, James. I have had it for months. No, you have not. It was in my garage last night and now it is not and you are using it. Are you accusing me of stealing? Her voice went up several octaves. How dare you? I am the HOA president. I do not care if you are the mayor. That is my property and I need it back. Barbara grabbed the shovel with both hands and held it closer to herself. This is mine. If you had a similar shovel and it is missing, perhaps you should look at other neighbors. Have you considered that the Henderson boy might have taken it? He is always causing trouble. The Henderson boy was 11 years old and weighed maybe 80 pounds. My shovel weighed 15 pounds and was nearly 6 feet long. The mental image of little Tommy Henderson trying to steal and carry my snow shovel was absurd. Barbara, I can see my tape on the handle. I can see the dent I made. That is my shovel. I put that tape on, she said, her chin jutting out stubbornly. And I made that dent. This is mine. We stood there in her driveway, two adults arguing over a shovel while the temperature hovered around 15 degrees and the wind cut through our winter coats. Several neighbors had come out to see what the commotion was about. I recognized Mike Torres from 2 doors down and Susan Fletcher from across the street. Everything okay here? Mike called out. James is harassing me, Barbara shouted before I could respond. He is trying to take my personal property. She took my shovel from my garage, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I am just trying to get it back. Did not, Barbara snapped. He is lying because he probably lost his own shovel and wants to blame someone else. Susan walked over, her arms crossed. Barbara, I saw you this morning walking from the direction of James's house carrying a shovel. I thought it was odd because you usually park your snow equipment on your back porch. Barbara's face flushed red. I was walking back from checking the community mailboxes. I was carrying my own shovel. The mailboxes are in the other direction, Mike pointed out. I took a walk first. I needed exercise. You people are ganging up on me. Barbara's voice had reached a pitch that probably scared local wildlife. I pulled out my phone. I have the receipt for this shovel on my email. I can prove I bought it. Receipts can be faked, Barbara said dismissively. Besides, even if you bought a shovel, how do you know this is that specific one? These are mass-produced items. The tape and the dent, Barbara. Come on, she shook her head vigorously. Coincidence. Lots of people use red tape, lots of shovels get dented. I was getting nowhere. Fine, give me my shovel back or I am calling the police. Go ahead, Barbara shrieked. Call them. They will tell you that you are wasting their time and harassing a pillar of this community. I have connections downtown, you know. My cousin works in the mayor's office. I did not know if that was true, and I did not care. I pulled up the non-emergency police number for Buffalo and made the call. The dispatcher was professional and said they would send an officer when one became available. Given the weather situation, I figured I would be waiting a while. You are actually calling the police. Barbara's voice had gone from shrill to almost gleeful. Over a shovel. Do you know how ridiculous you sound? It was a $575 shovel, Barbara. That is not nothing. Her eyes flickered with something I could not quite identify. $500 for a shovel. That is the most absurd thing I have ever heard. Which is probably why you took it, I said. You saw it in my garage at some point, wanted it for yourself, and decided to just take it during the blizzard when you thought I would not notice right away. Slander, Barbara gasped. I could sue you for defamation. Truth is a defense against defamation, Mike chimed in. He was a lawyer, and I appreciated the backup. Barbara glared at him. "You stay out of this, Mike, and I will be noting your participation in this harassment at the next HOA meeting. I seem to recall that your fence is 6 inches taller than the permitted height. It was approved by the Architectural Committee 2 years ago," Mike said calmly, "before you decided to reinterpret the bylaws." More neighbors had emerged now. The Kowalski family from the corner house, old Mr. Peterson from next door to Barbara, even the Chens who usually kept to themselves. A drama during a blizzard was apparently too good to miss. Barbara looked around at the growing crowd and seemed to realize she was losing the court of public opinion. "Fine. You want this shovel so badly. Take it." She threw it down in the snow at my feet. "But I am writing you up for an HOA violation for creating a public disturbance and for making baseless accusations against a board member. That is a $200 fine." I picked up my shovel, checking it over for damage. It seemed fine. "You cannot fine me for asking for my stolen property back. I can fine you for anything that violates community standards. Read your bylaws, James. Section 8, subsection 4, behavior unbecoming of a community member." She was smiling now, that vicious little smile that people get when they think they have won. "I will see you at the next meeting then," I said, "because I am definitely contesting that fine." "Contest all you want. The board will side with me. They always do." Barbara turned and marched toward her front door, her boots leaving aggressive footprints in the snow. I stood there with my shovel, feeling like I had won the battle but lost the war. Mike walked over and clapped me on the shoulder. "She really is something else," he said. "But hey, you got your shovel back. For now, who knows what she will pull next?" I looked at the shovel in my hands, then back at my house. "I am still calling the police report. I want this documented." "Good idea," Susan said, joining us. "Barbara has been getting worse. Last month she tried to fine the Hendersons because their Christmas lights were not the approved white color. They were warm white instead of cool white. Can you believe that?" "I can believe anything at this point," I said. I went back to my house to wait for the police. It took about 90 minutes, which I spent clearing my driveway with my recovered shovel. The physical labor felt good, working out the frustration of the confrontation. By the time the Buffalo police cruiser pulled up, I had my entire driveway done and had started on my front walk. The officer who got out was a woman in her mid-30s, bundled in a heavy police coat. Her name tag read Officer Williams. She had the patient, weary expression of someone who had been dealing with weather-related chaos for days. "You called about a theft?" she asked, pulling out a notepad. I explained the situation. She listened, took notes, and asked to see the receipt on my phone, which I pulled up. She photographed it with her own phone, then asked to examine the shovel. I showed her the tape and the dent. "And the woman who took it, she is the HOA president?" Officer Williams asked. "Barbara Richardson, yes. She lives 3 doors down." "Did you see her take it from your property?" "No, but it was in my garage last night, and this morning she had it." My neighbor Susan Fletcher saw her walking from the direction of my house with a shovel this morning around 7. Officer Williams nodded. "I need to talk to Miss Richardson and get her statement. Wait here, please." I watched as she walked down to Barbara's house and knocked on the door. Barbara answered, and I could see her gesturing animatedly even from this distance. The conversation went on for about 10 minutes. At one point, Barbara pointed in my direction, her arm flailing. Officer Williams remained calm, writing in her notebook. Finally, the officer walked back to me. "Miss Richardson claims the shovel is hers, and that you are harassing her. However, you have proof of purchase with the serial number visible in the product photo on the receipt. She could not provide any proof that she owned a similar shovel." I asked if she had a receipt or could tell me where she bought it, and she said she bought it at a garage sale for cash. Of course she did, I muttered. Here is what I am going to do, Officer Williams said. The value of the item is over $500, which makes this a potential grand larceny charge if I can establish theft. The evidence suggests the shovel is yours. You have documentation. She does not. I am going to issue her a desk appearance ticket for petit larceny, which will require her to appear in court. The district attorney will decide whether to upgrade the charge based on the value. Wait, you are actually arresting her. I had not expected that. Not arresting, not yet. The ticket is a legal order to appear. If she does not show up, then a warrant will be issued. If she continues to claim the shovel is hers in court and the evidence proves otherwise, the DA might pursue criminal charges. Theft over $500 in New York is serious. I felt a wave of vindication mixed with anxiety. I had just wanted my shovel back. Now Barbara was getting charged with a crime. Officer Williams must have seen my expression because she added, "Look, I know it seems like a lot over a shovel, but think about it from a legal perspective. If someone breaks into your garage and steals a $500 item, that is a crime. It does not matter if it is a shovel or a television or jewelry. The value determines the severity. Miss Richardson does not get a pass just because she is your HOA president." "I understand," I said. "Thank you for taking this seriously. Property crime is still crime. I will be right back." I watched as Officer Williams returned to Barbara's house. This time when Barbara answered the door, I could hear her voice even from where I stood. "What do you mean a ticket?" "I did not do anything wrong. This is harassment. I am going to call your supervisor." Officer Williams's voice was too calm and quiet for me to hear, but I saw her hand something to Barbara. Barbara's face went from red to purple. She snatched the paper from the officer's hand and slammed the door. Officer Williams walked back to me and handed me a case number. "Keep this. You will probably be contacted by the DA's office at some point if they decide to pursue charges. Document everything. If she retaliates against you in any way through the HOA, document that too. She already threatened to fine me $200 for creating a public disturbance." The officer shook her head. "Of course she did. Keep records of that too. If there is a pattern of retaliation, that helps establish motive and consciousness of guilt, makes the DA's case stronger." After Officer Williams left, I went inside and made myself a hot coffee. My hands were shaking slightly, and I was not sure if it was from the cold or the adrenaline. I had lived a pretty quiet life up until now. I worked from home as a software developer, kept to myself, paid my HOA dues on time. I had never been involved in anything that required police reports or potential court cases. My phone rang. It was Mike from down the street. "Dude, Barbara is losing it," he said without preamble. "She just sent an email to the entire HOA mailing list saying you assaulted her and stole her property, and that she is calling an emergency board meeting to have you fined and possibly expelled from the community. She said I assaulted her. I never touched her." "I know, man. I was there." "So was Susan. We both saw the whole thing. No assault happened, but she is spinning it. The email is insane. She is saying you threatened her, grabbed the shovel from her hands violently, and called the police with false accusations." I felt my stomach sink. "Can she actually get me expelled from the community?" "It is complicated. The HOA has rules about expulsion, but they are extreme measures usually reserved for people who do not pay dues or commit serious violations. She would need board approval, and even then, you could fight it legally. But she can make your life miserable in the meantime with fines and violations. This is insane. It was my shovel. I had proof." "I know. Look, Susan and I are both willing to provide statements about what we witnessed if it comes to that, and I am pretty sure the Kowalskis and others would too. Barbara has been abusing her power for years, and people are tired of it. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. I opened my email and found the message Barbara had sent. Reading it made my blood boil. She had completely fabricated a version of events where she was the victim, and I was some kind of violent thief. She claimed the police officer was unprofessional and took my side without proper investigation. She said she was considering a restraining order. I forwarded the entire email chain to my personal lawyer. Yes, I had a lawyer. After some of the HOA nonsense I had dealt with over the past 2 years, I had put a real estate attorney on retainer specifically for HOA issues. Her name was Rachel Morrison, and she was worth every penny. Rachel called me back within an hour. "James, this is actually good for your case," she said after I explained everything. "She is creating a documented pattern of false statements. The police report will show what actually happened. You have witnesses. And now she is retaliating by threatening you with HOA action. This is textbook abuse of power. So what do I do? First, respond to the HOA email. Keep it factual, unemotional. State that you recovered your stolen property with police assistance, that Miss Richardson was issued a ticket for theft, and that you have witnesses to the actual events. Do not engage with her accusations. Just state facts. Then let me draft a letter to the HOA board informing them that any retaliatory action will be met with legal action. Can I sue the HOA? You can sue Barbara personally for defamation if she continues making false statements. And if the HOA board acts on her false accusations knowing they are false, yes, you could potentially sue the HOA as well. But let us take this one step at a time. I spent the next hour crafting a careful response email with Rachel's help. It was calm, factual, and included the police case number. I attached a copy of my receipt for the shovel and mentioned that multiple witnesses could confirm the events of the morning. I sent it to the entire HOA mailing list, the same distribution Barbara had used. The responses started coming in within minutes. Most were supportive. Several neighbors thanked me for standing up to Barbara. A few people shared their own stories of her unreasonable behavior. The Chens, who I had barely ever spoken to, sent me a private email saying Barbara had tried to fine them $500 last year for planting flowers that were not on the approved list, even though the flowers in question were native species recommended by the county's environmental committee. But there were also a few responses supporting Barbara. The Wilmers family, who lived on the other end of the development, sent a sanctimonious email about respecting community leadership and not causing drama. Robert Nash, one of the board members and Barbara's friend, sent a message saying he was disappointed in my behavior and that personal disputes should be handled privately, not with police involvement. The email war continued throughout the afternoon. I tried to stop checking my inbox every 5 minutes, but it was like watching a train wreck. People were choosing sides, old grievances were being aired, and the whole community was melting down over a snow shovel. By evening, I had received a formal notice from the HOA. Barbara, as president, was fining me $200 for creating a public disturbance and making false accusations against a board member. The fine was due within 30 days, and failure to pay would result in additional penalties and potential legal action from the HOA. I forwarded it to Rachel immediately. She called me back and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Perfect. She is doubling down. This is going to make everything so much easier. Easier how? I am getting fined. James, you are not going to pay that fine. This is retaliation. pure and simple. She stole your property, got caught, and now she is using her position to punish you. I am going to send a letter to the entire HOA board tomorrow informing them that any enforcement of this fine will be considered retaliatory action and will be met with immediate legal challenge. I am also going to recommend that Barbara recuse herself from any HOA matters involving you due to the criminal case pending against her. Will they listen? Some of them will. The board members who are not in Barbara's pocket will realize they are opening themselves up to liability if they back her up on this. The ones who do support her, well, they will learn the hard way. That night, I barely slept. The wind howled outside, and the weather forecast was calling for another 18 inches of snow starting tomorrow morning. I kept thinking about the absurdity of the situation. All I had wanted was to clear my driveway with my own equipment. Now, I was in the middle of a community civil war with potential criminal charges and lawsuits flying around. The next morning, the second wave of the blizzard hit as promised. I went out early to clear my driveway before the snow got too deep. My shovel, safely recovered, worked perfectly. I could see a few other neighbors out doing the same. Mike gave me a wave. Susan gave me a thumbs up. Barbara's driveway remained uncleared. Her Lexus was buried under snow. I wondered if she was inside stewing or if she had already left to plot her next move. Around 10, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find 2 Buffalo police officers standing there and Barbara standing behind them on my front walk, her arms crossed and her expression triumphant. "James Dalton," one of the officers asked. He was an older guy, probably close to retirement with gray hair and a mustache. "Yes. We received a complaint from Barbara Richardson that you stole her snow removal equipment. Can you tell us about that?" I blinked. "Are you serious? She filed a police report against me." "She did. Can we come in and talk?" I let them in, my mind racing. Barbara stayed outside, probably because she knew I would not let her in my house. The officers introduced themselves as Officer Martinez and Officer Chen. I explained the entire situation from the beginning, showed them the same receipt I had shown Officer Williams, and gave them her case number from yesterday. Officer Martinez made some notes and radioed in to confirm the case. After a few minutes, he nodded. "Okay, I see Officer Williams's report from yesterday. She documented that Miss Richardson was issued a desk appearance ticket for petit larceny regarding this same shovel. So she filed a police report claiming I stole property that she was already charged with stealing from me." I asked, incredulous. "Apparently so," Officer Chen said, looking like he was trying not to smile. "This is a first for me." Officer Martinez went back outside to talk to Barbara. I could not hear the conversation, but I saw her expression go from smug to confused to absolutely furious. She started yelling, pointing at my house, pointing at the officers. Officer Martinez remained calm, but I saw his body language shift to what I recognized from TV as a more defensive stance. Officer Chen stayed with me. "Does she have any mental health issues you are aware of?" he asked quietly. "Not that I know of. She is just the HOA president and really invested in her power." "HOA," Officer Chen said, shaking his head. "I have responded to more disputes over HOA nonsense than I care to count. People get these little bits of authority and lose their minds." Officer Martinez came back inside. "Miss Richardson insists that she filed a report with Officer Williams yesterday claiming you stole her shovel, and that the officer was biased and took your side unfairly." I explained that Officer Williams actually issued her a ticket, not you, and that filing a false police report is itself a crime. She is now saying she wants to press charges for harassment. "Harassment," I said. "I have not contacted her at all since yesterday morning." She claims the email you sent to the community was harassment. The email where I stated facts and provided the police case number? That is what I gathered, yes. Officer Martinez looked tired. Mr. Dalton, I am going to be honest with you. This is a civil dispute that has gotten out of hand. We have documented that you have proof of ownership of the shovel. Officer Williams made her determination based on evidence. Miss Richardson is clearly upset about that, but filing additional reports is not going to change the facts. My suggestion is that you both stay away from each other and let the courts handle it. I have no problem with that, I said. I just want to be left alone. And the HOA fines, my lawyer is handling that. Officer Martinez nodded. Good, keep everything documented if Miss Richardson comes on your property or contacts you directly. Document that too. If she keeps filing false police reports, she is going to face additional charges. After they left, I watched Barbara stomp back to her house, her boots punching angry holes in the snow. I felt exhausted, and it was not even noon. Rachel called me an hour later, laughing. I just got a call from the HOA board secretary, Patricia Summers. She is one of the reasonable ones. Apparently, Barbara tried to call an emergency board meeting for tonight to vote on your expulsion, and Patricia told her absolutely not. Patricia said she is not exposing the HOA to a massive lawsuit because Barbara is having a meltdown. Really? Patricia also said that 2 other board members, David Klein and Margaret Foster, are considering asking for Barbara's resignation. They are tired of the drama, and they are worried about liability. If Barbara is charged with theft, it looks terrible for the community to have a criminal as HOA president. She was only charged with petty larceny so far, right? Not grand larceny, correct, but the DA could upgrade the charge based on the value. I did some research. In New York, grand larceny in the 4th degree is theft of property valued over $1,000. Your shovel was $575, so it does not quite meet that threshold. However, petty larceny is still a class of misdemeanor, which can carry up to a year in jail and fines. She could actually go to jail over this, if she is convicted, potentially. More likely, she would get probation and community service for a first offense, assuming she does not have a record. But that is still a criminal conviction. I sat down heavily on my couch. This is so out of control. It is, Rachel agreed, but you did not make it this way. You just wanted your property back. Barbara escalated at every turn. That is on her. The next few days were relatively quiet. The snow continued on and off, but nothing as severe as the initial blizzard. I worked from home, had groceries delivered, and avoided checking my email more than necessary. The HOA message board had devolved into complete chaos, with people arguing about everything from Barbara's leadership to snow removal policies to whether the community should even have an HOA at all. Barbara's court date for the desk appearance ticket was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, she seemed to be laying low, though her Lexus was conspicuously absent from her driveway most days. I figured she was either staying with friends or just parking elsewhere to avoid me. Then I got a call from Officer Williams. Mr. Dalton, I wanted to give you a heads up. The DA's office has decided to upgrade the charges against Miss Richardson. To grand larceny, I asked, confused. But the shovel was not worth over $1,000. No, not that. They are adding charges of filing a false report and aggravated harassment. When she called in that second complaint claiming you stole her property, that was a false report made with the intent to cause you trouble. And the DA considers her pattern of behavior, including the threatening emails and the HOA fine, to constitute harassment. Oh. Her new court date is in 2 weeks. She will be arraigned on all charges together. I wanted you to know because you might be called as a witness. Okay, thank you for letting me know. After I hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. Barbara had committed crimes and was facing consequences. But part of me just felt sad about the whole situation. It was all so unnecessary. 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting in Buffalo City Court, waiting to be called. The building was old and imposing, with high ceilings and wood paneling that had probably been installed decades ago. Rachel was with me, briefcase in hand, looking every inch the competent attorney. Barbara was there with her own lawyer, a young guy in an off-the-rack suit who looked like he was fresh out of law school. She had dressed conservatively in a navy suit and minimal jewelry, probably on her lawyer's advice. Her hair was styled differently, less aggressive somehow. When the case was called, we all stood. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Morrison, reviewed the charges while reading from her computer screen. Miss Richardson, you are charged with 1 count of petit larceny, 1 count of filing a false police report, and 1 count of aggravated harassment in the 2nd degree. How do you plead? Barbara's lawyer stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Very well. Does the people have a position on bail? The assistant district attorney, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, stood. The people request $5,000 bail, Your Honor. Miss Richardson has demonstrated a pattern of harassing behavior toward the victim, including abuse of her position as HOA president to retaliate against him. Your Honor, that is absurd, Barbara's lawyer protested. My client is a respected member of the community with no criminal record. She is not a flight risk. She is a risk to the victim, the ADA countered. She has sent threatening communications, attempted to impose fraudulent fines, and has tried to use law enforcement to further harass him by filing false reports. Judge Morrison looked at Barbara over her reading glasses. Miss Richardson, do you have anything to say? Barbara stood, her voice shaking. Your Honor, I am not a criminal. This is all a huge misunderstanding. I have lived in Buffalo my entire life. I have served my community as HOA president for 7 years. I made a mistake about the shovel. I thought it was mine. That is all. I should not be treated like some kind of dangerous felon. You thought a shovel that was documented as belonging to someone else with their modifications on it was yours? The judge asked skeptically. It looked like mine, Barbara said weakly. And the false police report, I was confused. I was upset. And the harassment. I was just doing my job as HOA president. Judge Morrison was silent for a long moment. Here is what I think happened, Miss Richardson. I think you saw a very expensive piece of equipment in your neighbor's garage, and you decided you wanted it. I think you took it during a blizzard, hoping he would not notice or would not be able to prove it was his. When you got caught, instead of admitting your mistake and apologizing, you doubled down. You abused your position to retaliate against the victim. You wasted police resources with a false report. These are not the actions of someone who made an innocent mistake. Barbara's face had gone white. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm. However, the judge continued, you do not have a criminal record, and these are not violent offenses. I am going to release you on your own recognizance, but I am also issuing an order of protection. You are to have no contact with James Dalton. No direct contact. No indirect contact through third parties, no contact through HOA communications. If you need to send community-wide HOA emails, someone else will have to send them. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Barbara whispered. If you violate this order, you will be arrested immediately and bail will be set high. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Good. Trial date is set for 6 weeks from today. You are free to go." Outside the courthouse, Rachel was practically beaming. "That went even better than I hoped. The order of protection means she cannot retaliate against you through the HOA anymore. If she tries to fine you or send you violations, she is in contempt of court." "What happens now?" "Now we wait for trial. Or more likely, her lawyer will try to work out a plea deal. The evidence is pretty damning. She has no defense against the theft charge, and the false report and harassment charges are backed up by documentation and witnesses." "Will she actually go to jail?" "Probably not for a first offense. But she will definitely have a criminal record, and she will probably lose her position as HOA president. The community bylaws likely have provisions about board members with criminal convictions." I checked the HOA bylaws that night. Rachel was right. Any board member convicted of a crime involving theft, fraud, or dishonesty was automatically removed from the board and barred from serving for 5 years. If Barbara was convicted, her reign as HOA president was over. 3 weeks after the arraignment, Rachel called me with news. Barbara's lawyer reached out to the DA about a plea deal. That was fast. He knows he does not have a case. Barbara wants to plead guilty to petty larceny and pay restitution. In exchange, the DA will drop the false report and harassment charges. What kind of restitution? The value of the shovel plus your legal fees. So around $2,000 total. She will also have to do community service and attend an anger management program. She will be on probation for a year. Will she have a criminal record? Yes, it will be a misdemeanor conviction for theft. The DA is willing to recommend no jail time given that it is her first offense and she is making restitution, but the conviction stays on her record. And the HOA, with a theft conviction, she is automatically removed as president. The board will have to hold an election for a new president. I thought about it. What do you think I should do? That is up to you. You can push for trial, but trials are expensive and time-consuming. A plea deal gives you restitution, gets her removed from power, and gives her a criminal record. That is a pretty good outcome. Okay. Let us accept the deal. The plea hearing was 2 weeks later. Barbara stood before the judge and admitted to stealing my snow shovel. Her voice was barely audible, and she did not look at me once during the entire proceeding. Judge Morrison accepted the plea and sentenced her to 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory anger management counseling, and restitution of $2,000 to be paid to me within 60 days. When it was over, I walked out of the courthouse into a gray Buffalo afternoon. The snow had finally stopped for good. It was late March now, and the temperature was hovering just above freezing. The massive piles of snow lining the streets were slowly melting, creating rivers of slush. Rachel walked with me to my car. "How do you feel?" "Tired," I admitted. "Mostly just tired." "That is understandable. This has been a lot." "I never wanted any of this. I just wanted my shovel back." "I know. But sometimes standing up for yourself has consequences." "Not bad consequences, just consequences. You did the right thing." 2 weeks later, I received a cashier's check from Barbara's attorney for $2,000. No note, no apology, just the check. I deposited it and tried to put the whole thing behind me. The HOA held an emergency election for a new president. Mike Torres ran and won in a landslide. His first act was to repeal a bunch of Barbara's ridiculous rules, including the approved flower list, the fence height restrictions, and the rule that all mailboxes had to be exactly the same shade of black. His second act was to send an email to the community apologizing for the chaos of the past few months and promising a return to reasonable governance. Barbara's house went up for sale in April. I never saw her again. According to neighborhood gossip, she moved to somewhere in Florida to live with her sister. Good riddance. The snow finally melted completely by mid-April. I cleaned up my yard, planted some flowers that were definitely not on any approved list, and enjoyed the spring weather. My expensive snow shovel hung in its proper place in my garage, and every time I walked past it, I thought about the absolute insanity of that week in February. Mike stopped by one Saturday afternoon while I was grilling burgers. "Hey, neighbor, thought you might want to see this." He handed me a letter. It was from the HOA board, signed by all 5 members. It was an official apology for the harassment I had endured under Barbara's presidency, and an acknowledgement that the $200 fine she had issued had been improper and was hereby voided. The letter went on to say that the board was implementing new oversight procedures to prevent any future abuse of power by the president. "Wow," I said. "I did not expect this." "It was unanimous," Mike said. "Even Robert Nash voted for it." I think he realized how close the HOA came to getting sued into oblivion. Plus, once Barbara was convicted, everyone kind of woke up to how crazy things had gotten. "Well, I appreciate it. You did the community a favor, man. Barbara was making everyone miserable. You were just the one who finally stood up to her." We grilled burgers and drank beer and talked about normal things like sports and work and the upcoming summer. It felt good to just be a regular guy in a regular neighborhood again. Later that evening, I was cleaning up when Susan Fletcher from across the street came by with a homemade pie. "I wanted to say thank you," she said, handing me the pie. "It was still warm." "For what?" "For standing up to Barbara. My husband and I were planning to move because we could not take her anymore. The constant violations, the fines, the nasty emails. It was making us hate living here. But now, with Mike as president, things are so much better. We decided to stay." "I am glad," I said sincerely. "This is a nice community when it is not being run by a tyrant," Susan laughed. "That is the truth. Anyway, enjoy the pie. It is apple." After she left, I sat on my front porch with a slice of pie and watched the sun set. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Kids were riding bikes in the street. Someone was mowing their lawn. The Chens were working in their garden, planting all sorts of non-approved flowers. I thought about everything that had happened. The blizzard, the stolen shovel, the confrontations, the police reports, the court dates. It had been exhausting and stressful and at times completely surreal. But it had also been necessary. Barbara had been abusing her power for years, making people miserable, and nobody had stopped her because confrontation is hard, and she had the authority of the HOA behind her. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself even when it is difficult. Sometimes you have to push back against petty tyrants even when it would be easier to just let them win. Sometimes a $575 snow shovel is not just a snow shovel. It is a line in the snow, a boundary that says this far and no further. I finished my pie and went inside. Summer was coming, and I had no doubt that living in an HOA community would bring new challenges and new absurdities. But for now, things were good. The tyrant was gone, reasonable people were in charge, and my snow shovel was safely in my garage waiting for next winter. And if Barbara ever decided to move back from Florida, well, I had a very good lawyer on retainer and a proven track record of not backing down. Something told me I would not have any problems. The Pleasant Valley HOA community newsletters started arriving regularly after Mike took over as president. They were cheerful, informative, and contained absolutely zero threats of fines or accusations of violations. It was remarkable how much more pleasant community life became when the person in charge was not a power-hungry tyrant. In June, the HOA threw a community barbecue in the common area. Everyone came, even the neighbors who had previously kept to themselves, to avoid Barbara's wrath. The Kowalskis brought homemade kielbasa. The Chens brought dumplings. The Hendersons brought a ridiculous amount of potato salad. It was the kind of neighborhood event that should have been happening all along. Mike gave a short speech thanking everyone for their patience during the transition and promising that the HOA would focus on maintaining property values and community amenities rather than policing everyone's personal choices. People actually applauded. I stood there with a beer in my hand, watching neighbors who had barely spoken to each other in years laughing and talking. And I realized that the whole shovel incident, as crazy as it had actually brought the community together. Sometimes it takes a crisis to make people realize they need to change. As summer turned to fall, life settled into a comfortable routine. I worked, I maintained my house, I nodded hello to neighbors. The HOA board meetings, which I started attending out of civic duty, were boring in the best possible way. Discussions about landscaping contracts and budget allocations, rather than witch hunts and power trips. In October, I made a point to check all my snow equipment early. The expensive shovel was still in perfect condition. I bought some new ice melt and made sure my snow blower was tuned up. When the first frost came, I was ready. And when the first real snow fell in late November, I went out to my garage, grabbed my shovel, and cleared my driveway without incident. No drama, no theft, no police involvement. Just a man clearing snow with his own equipment on his own property in peace. It was glorious.